Mel Kiper Jr. releasing his mock draft 2.0 today. There's the full mock. And again, Mel has quarterbacks going 1, 2, and 3. And now we are joined by the legend himself, Mel Kiper Jr. Mel, take us through the top 3 picks, starting with who you have going number 1 overall.
Yeah, Caleb right now is going right, when you look at the mock to the Chicago Bears, with Washington staying at 2 and taking Jayden Daniels. Could Washington move up to 1 or try to? Yes, they could, but Caleb's going to be the number 1 pick overall. If Chicago's not bowled over by a offer, bonanza, okay, giving up everything and the ranch to get that number 1 pick, you trade Justin Fields, get the 2, recoup that you traded to get Montez Sweat, and then you get a 4. Jayden Daniels makes so much sense at 2. He's clearly, in my opinion, when you look at the top 3 quarterbacks, after the momentum he built up from that great year, would be an ideal fit for Washington. He can do anything you want a quarterback to do. Beat you with his legs, beat you with his arm. He doesn't turn the ball over. So for Washington to get Jayden Daniels at 2 with Drake Maye at 3, who did not have that wow year. He missed throws you should make. He did not build on 2022. Now he lost his coordinator and his top weapon at wide receiver, but some of those throws you could not excuse away that Drake Maye missed. I still think he could be in that line to be that 3rd pick overall. New England has to develop an infrastructure around the quarterback. Mac Jones had success right away out of Alabama. Why did he struggle the last 2 years? They couldn't protect him. He had nobody to throw to. So New England has a decision to make here. We trade, keep it. If you keep it, obviously Drake Maye's the guy, and Drake Maye needs help. Any quarterback's going to need help. He's only 21 years of age, guys, and this is a kid who has awesome talent, but this year he did not play to the level he did in 2022.
All right, Mel, you hang tight. Let's dig into number 3 with the Patriots. For our draft analyst, Matt Miller, joining us now as well. Matt, do you think the Patriots should go with Maye at 3 or trade back and get more talent?
Yeah, Jay, I think this is the time to trade back. And I'm a Drake Maye fan as well, but I think what Mel said is so right. If the infrastructure is not there, who's the left tackle? Who's the number 1 wide receiver? Who's the number 2 wide receiver? They don't have those go-to weapons. And I think this is a year where I would at least look at this roster and say, we can move back from number 3 overall. Maybe you slide back to number 6 with the New York Giants, who are desperate for a quarterback. You could still walk away with one of maybe the top left tackle, a Joe Alt from Notre Dame, maybe the number 2 or number 3 receiver in this historically deep wide receiver class, and you're setting yourself up for the future because you're going to get maybe 2 to 3 second-round picks in this year's draft and next year's draft to move back just those couple of spots. So as much as I like Drake Maye, I think we see a team that doesn't have the infrastructure in place to help him. And right now, it's a much more valuable situation to trade back instead of forcing a quarterback. That's how you end up with a Daniel Jones situation. Forcing a quarterback, you back yourself into a need and into a corner. As talented as Drake Maye can be, I don't think New England is set up to give him that success. This is not C.J. Stroud going to the Houston Texans like last year. This would be a spot where you're kind of in a hole from the jump, Tim.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, I think I would push back on that a little bit, Matt, just because I don't know that a lot of people looking at Houston saying, hey, what an ideal situation for a young quarterback to go have success. Now, they happen to hit not only on C.J. Stroud, but other draft picks in that class. And with those guys playing well, you know, it looks like a promising situation in Houston at the moment under a first-year head coach. I think in some ways you could look at New England and say, look, a lot of questions, much like there were a lot of questions this time of year in Houston, but what they got right was the quarterback, then some other, pieces around the quarterback. And on top of that, they got it right with a young defensive-minded head coach. And I would just say this about Drake Maye. Listen, did he miss some throws? Yeah, all these guys missed some throws, and there was a lot of change around him at Carolina this past year. I would say this. You're picking at the top of the draft at 3 to get Drake Maye at 3. Where are you picking next year? Who's the quarterback that's available for you next year? And I just feel like every time we have this conversation, I'm just reminded of the Matt Ryan situation in Atlanta. They were sitting there at 3, and there were other options. And, a couple guys went before him, and it was like, well, is he good enough to go at 3? Well, because they got that right, Atlanta was set up for a lot of success. And so I just think it's a similar situation, picking at 3 and Drake Maye still being on the board.
Yeah, Tim, I think when you look at it with the infrastructure, as Matt talked about, we all said Carolina had the infrastructure in place for Bryce Young. It didn't work out that way. He was sacked, he was hit, he was pounded. They couldn't protect him. He didn't have the receivers. And Houston ended up having the infrastructure. It just evolved into that. And C.J. Stroud took his game, took that team to a level nobody could have thought back in August. So the best laid plan, sometimes you think an organization does and they don't. Sometimes you think they have issues and then they turn out to fix them quicker than you thought. If New England believes Drake Maye is a franchise quarterback potentially in the not too distant future, you have to take him. If you have questions, and I'm not saying you have to like all three quarterbacks, how many times have we seen quarterbacks bust out early? They do. But if they have strong conviction about Drake Maye, I don't think you worry about the infrastructure now. You don't worry about that. You take the quarterback. If they have questions about Maye, then obviously you move down and you try to build up around whoever the quarterback is. As I said, they gave Mac Jones, they didn't give him a fighting chance after really showing promise his rookie year. Drake Maye has more talent than Mac Jones does. But if they believe strongly in Mac Jones, I don't worry about the line and the receivers. I take Drake Maye and build around him moving forward.
Pete, we haven't heard much from Williams since the college football season ended. You had a chance to talk with him at length last night. What did you take away from that conversation?
Yeah, Jay, I think from the macro, from talking to Caleb Williams, he's a 22-year-old kid excited to be on the cusp of his dream here, going to the NFL Combine, obviously one of the huge mile markers before the NFL Draft. Caleb told me that he's been waiting for his whole life for this moment. He really, at age 10 or 11, decided he wanted to be a professional football player, and he's right there on the cusp of his goal. He'd been basically, since USC's season ended in late November, laying low. He's worked out with noted quarterback trainer Will Hewlett. He's been in Florida most recently. He studied the mental side of the game in terms of protections and different defenses he's going to see, and worked on huddling and different transitions from college to the NFL. But he's had a fairly normal pre-draft process.
There's been lots of speculation about Caleb and his camp's willingness to play for the Bears. What did Mr. Williams have to say about that?
Yeah, well, Jay, that was the biggest takeaway from the conversation is Caleb Williams told me he'd be excited to play for the Bears if they drafted him. But he also said, look, if they trade the pick and they trade me somewhere else, I'll be excited to go there too. I asked Caleb explicitly about the notion that he could hold up the draft or do what John Elway or Eli Manning did in prior generations and manipulate the draft. And he strongly denied he has ever had any intention of doing that. He said he had no agenda. He said ultimately, paraphrasing here, the ball is in the Bears' court. They have the final say, were the words that he used. So the Bears can decide whether they want him. And if he does end up in Chicago, he said he's excited. He's been to Chicago, told me he loves deep dish pizza. He's done Walter Payton rabbit holes on YouTube, and he's excited to go if that's where his professional home ends up being.
The Bears also hold the 9th pick, and Mel has them taking LSU receiver Malik Nabers. Mel, why Nabers for the Bears?
Yeah, he's so explosive and dynamic, and he had a phenomenal year along with Jayden Daniels, with Brian Thomas Jr. on the other side. And if he's there, he's one of my elite players in this draft, right there with Rome Odunze as the second best receiver in this draft. Malik Nabers was spectacular this year. He's got a great attitude. He's a baller. He loves to play the game. He's aggressive in his approach. Tough kid. And I think when you look at say, Tennessee, you say, well, they have to take an offensive tackle. And I gave them Joe Alt. They could not protect Will Levis. But hey, Cincinnati had to take Penei Sewell, right? Well, they didn't. They took Jamar Chase, and Sewell went to the Lions. So if that happens, maybe the Bears end up with somebody other than Malik Nabers. But certainly if he's there, he's a steal, Tim, for the Chicago Bears and helping out the young quarterback Caleb Williams, if in fact they draft Caleb number 1.
Yeah, and pairing a young quarterback with a talented receiver is obviously a good thing to do because you start to work on chemistry. That's something that you think will go a long period of time. And watching Nabers, I think what's interesting, you said a lot of it, Mel, in terms of his explosiveness. Like, he's a football player. I think that's the thing sometimes when you look at receivers, guys that are, hey, is the guy fast? Like, yeah, he's fast, but he also does a great job, with his releases. Does he understand, like, when to slow it down when it's zone coverage and he's in a hole? Like, he understands that. Like, he comes across to me as a guy that he's more football player than just receiver. And I think when you think about that and some guys that have come out of the program there at LSU, that is a very good thing, and it would certainly make a lot of sense pairing him with a quarterback, and then obviously a position of need when you look at the Bears' current roster.
All right, more from the mock draft. With the 10th pick, Mel has the Jets taking Georgia tight end Brock Bowers. Mel, why Bowers for the Jets?
Love Brock Bowers. I think could be great with Aaron Rodgers, and obviously they need somebody to help out Garrett Wilson. We say, well, they have to take an offensive line. They're going to help the offensive line in more ways than just his 10th pick. It just didn't flow that way. I had J.C. Latham off the board at 5. I had Joe Otto off the board at 7. Olu Fashanu is a little bit mixed opinion on the tackle from Penn State. If it fell, say, with Latham or Alt there, I think they would take the tackle over Brock Bowers. With those two tackles gone, Bowers gives you a dynamic that nobody else in this draft has, Boog. He can do everything you want. He's a receiving entity.
Yeah, no doubt, Mel. When you look at Brock Bowers, I can't think of another tight end that I've seen take a jet sweep and run around the corner. He is more of a weapon than a tight end. Now, you may lose a little bit of the blocking, although he is a willing blocker on the line of scrimmage. But when you talk about a player, a tight end in this draft that can be Travis Kelce-like, that can be a weapon where you build your entire offense around him, that's what you get in Brock Bowers. Now, I know Jets fans are going to say, yeah, but if we don't protect the quarterback, he can't throw to anyone, and I truly understand that. I may lean toward going tackle here, even if I don't want to reach for one because we got to protect Aaron Rodgers. But, Mel, when you talk about Brock Bowers, he is one of one in this draft. There is no player like him. And regardless of what he tests like, regardless of what he runs in the 40, I know when I get Brock Bowers, I'm going to get the ultimate weapon on my team.
Let's go to number 12, where Mel has the 4th quarterback off the board in J.J. McCarthy. Mel, why McCarthy to the Denver Broncos?
I think just on the fact that, hey, you got Sean Payton, you got a quarterback need, you got a guy who's just turned 21 years of age, who played really well for Michigan this year, despite the fact he didn't have to carry the team. Well, guess what? When he needed to make plays, he did, and it was less margin for error. You talk about, 25 throws a game, not 40. So when he made a play or a throw, he had to make it because he didn't have many opportunities. He didn't have any makeup throws. So or look at the run he had in the national championship game when he used his legs. So for J.J. McCarthy, the division, the conference, they got to get Matt a young quarterback and develop him, and McCarthy's got talent galore.
Yeah, this is a great matchup with Sean Payton, who, if you can play for Jim Harbaugh, you can play for Sean Payton. It's going to be tough love, but it's going to be great, and he's going to be able to develop him. This is something that Payton wanted when he got to Denver, was to be able to hand-pick his next quarterback. That didn't happen with Russell Wilson. I think it happens with J.J. McCarthy, who's a good runner. He's got great arm strength, and he will take what the defense gives him. That's one of my favorite things about his game is watch the Ohio State game where he sees a linebacker have their head turned, so he just throws the ball in that replacement window. So he's smart, he's tough, he's instinctive, and he's athletic enough to be exactly what you want as a modern quarterback. So this is the right spot. I know I didn't love the Drake Maye pick at 3, but 12 getting J.J. McCarthy to Denver feels like a really good fit and a really good value too.